basically during the next couple of minutes, I'm going to talk a lot about, well, not a lot, but a bit about DAOs, governance, frameworks, how to structure things, how we're seeing different things. If you have any questions, feel free to write them in the app. Or if you want, we can talk later about something that you guys decided that it's interesting. I'm always happy to talk about governance. The title might not be very enticing. Everything should be a framework, but yeah, I'll get into that in a couple of minutes. First, this is me when I was in good terms with the racer. Now, not so much. I started my career a long time ago in consulting firms. Then I moved to startups and scale-ups, and I discovered Web3 by accident. And then, yeah, I stayed or decided to for a long time. Couple of disclaimers before we start. My views are my own. Usually, when you're in a DAO, you cannot even represent the whole DAO because it's so everything moves and there's no like central PR department. Then this is not financial advice, not legal advice, and maybe it's a little bit of mental health advice if you follow along. So before we start, what is governance design? This is something that not many people are thinking about, but it's the process of designing and implementing structures, processes, and systems to pretty much make collective decisions, allocate resources, and manage conflicts, which is pretty much how to organize people around a common objective. When you have a very small task, let's say you're hanging out with friends and playing football, maybe you probably don't need a very complex system, but when you're FIFA on the other side of the spectrum, you probably need a lot of governance. And it's all about trade-offs, right? So when you're, for example, designing a sandbox for kids, you might build walls that are too high, and then the kids cannot access it, or they are too low and the sand just goes away. Same with things that might be too dangerous or not fun enough. So there's always these trade-offs that you need to be considering, and of course you need to try to optimize and discover new things through experiments. So the question of the million die, what are DAOs? It's basically decentralized autonomous organizations for those that didn't know. And yeah, recently I've been hearing people calling them DCOs for decentralized collective organizations, since the autonomous part might be lacking in a lot of them. But this is basically organizations that work in ways that are a bit different, and I'll show you how. But these are DAOs before they were cool, that have more than, for example, 85 years. One of them is Alcoholics Anonymous. This one's very, very famous. Yeah, it includes thousands of groups across the globe. Anyone can start a chapter, so if you want to help your own community, you can just read you follow the process. There's this whole process that they have implemented, but anyone can start it. And there are different formats that adjust for the regional things, so they are very localized in that sense. So that's an example of what it could be thought of a DAO. Another one that's for profit, it's the Mondragon Corporation. This is a Spanish company. It's pretty big. I think they have like over 75,000 employees, over 10 billion in revenue, and it's like this federation of small cooperatives which actually make profits, and they are managed by the own employees, owned by the own employees. And again, they have this process. If you want to form one, you form your group, you get with a couple of friends or people that you have some business goals in common. You contact their department, which will help you. You participate in the training, you submit a business plan. Of course, it's for profit. Then they have their own bank, which helps a lot for the financing. And finally, you establish the cooperative. Of course, it sounds much easier than it is, but anyone can start a company within this group. And then going more into Web3 and why is it important for us, the DAOs are coming. So once we have these decentralized blockchains and we can see everything, one can think or might think that this is an evolution of how work is going to work in the future, especially when the current structures are starting to break apart. So again, a lot of speed since everything's digital and transparent, and trustlessness. So how do we build the things, or the barriers, going back to the sandbox examples, that we need when we need to work with people that we might not even know, we might not know their names, their intentions. So how do you create that environment? So going back to the main argument of my talk, we believe that the solutions are frameworks, and I'll explain why we need frameworks first. So when your DAO, your organization, does not have a framework, it's extremely hard for anyone to just come in and start participating. It's like they join, there might be a forum, some, I don't know, Discord group or Telegram, and it's like, okay, if I want to do something, how do I do it? How do I get compensated? Is there any type of compensations? What's the objective? So it's very hard to follow. And same thing for the people inside. It's like, what are we even doing here? How do we go about it? And this leads to the rise of the bureaucrats, which is, instead of people that are creating value, are people that are extracting value from a given protocol. Hopefully it's profitable, but otherwise it might be VC's money or token holders' money or whoever's money. But these contributors become actually middle managers, which are just trying to keep their job and trying to keep their pay, the spice flowing, instead of producing value and seeing what the next challenge is. It's very hard to prioritize. It's very easy to stall if you know how the system works. It's very easy to bring up an argument or just try to convince people of why we should not change or innovate or do something about any given problem. And as I was saying, the bureaucrats will try to protect their own job instead of actually creating value for the token holders. So some solutions on how to frame governance. I'm going to go quickly through this. We can talk about it later if you guys want. But one of them is having the vision, the mission, and the strategy, which is the why, the how, and the what, relatively clear, so that people can join if they share one of those values and they can start contributing. Then the other is actually focus. This also applies for any type of organization or business. But you have like your builders on one side, the users on the other side, and you need to understand your core. If you're trying to make money, focus on that value. If you're trying to solve another challenge, focus on that. Same thing for the builders or anyone that wants to help and contribute. Try to focus on the main contributors and then move to the outer layers of the groups. There are different pillars which are extremely important when you're setting up a DAO, and each DAO will have different abilities and look for different things. If it's a nonprofit, if it's some decentralized science, if it's for a human cause, they will vary a lot on the ways that these things work. So you need to think about all these pillars and how you actually want to set up these things. And finally, you have always workforce, which is the people. You have the work, which is what we're trying to accomplish, and you have the capital, which is how do you contribute and what are the incentives for things to go around. So you need to set up these leadership measurements and processes to kind of make sure that the three things are working nicely together. Once that you've decided all of that and you have a clear idea of what you want to build, you just code it. So it's extremely easy to create a DAO. You can start today. This could be constitution, it could be protocol as smart contracts, it could be tokenomics. We could speak about hours in any of these given topics. But yeah, processes, dashboards, templates, any documents if people want to, start contributing or help in a way or another. So once you do have that coded, we like to think about these as layers of software. So you have the users, which are going to interact with the UI. Those UIs belong to an app. Then you have the OS layer, the operating system, and then finally you have the kernel. So how does that look like in terms of processes? It's a bit like this, right? So you have the token holders, the prog users, and the contributors are kind of like the users, and they have different ways of interactive with the constitution, which is the vision, which is encoded in the protocol, again, smart contracts, and tokenomics, also smart contracts, how token moves. Hopefully I didn't lose many people there. Again, we can talk about that later. But yeah, some key takeaways about governance design. You should always choose frameworks instead of managers or operators. And the reason is that it's much more powerful to actually discuss an idea instead of discussing people. A really bad example could be, okay, we don't like this project because look how it's framed, or look how it's how the proposal came, instead of saying like every project should come with or frame this way or with this proposal. That makes it much more egalitarian for everyone, much more open. People trust more the framework. So that's an important one. Regarding the frameworks and the people, it's almost the same point. So you will have less politics, less, okay, I think that this contributor is trying to get this project in, and that's not because it's good for us, but because it's good for him, since he's also an investor in the other project. So once you have this discussion of frameworks, everything becomes much more transparent. And you could actually say, like, I'm an investor here, I think this is a really good project, that's why I'm an investor, and this would be good. So let's modify the framework to make sure that these good things are accepted from now on. And then the other thing is to start really, really early. So governance should not be an afterthought and something that you will figure out later, because otherwise you will attract potentially the wrong people that's going to, or that might, not align perfectly with what you're trying to accomplish. We've seen a lot of those at Maker. We could potentially write a book about it. And right now we're going through a huge organizational transformation. If you want to learn a little bit more, you can go to makerendgame.com. And if you want a chatbot that usually does not give very accurate answers, but it tries, go to wizard.makerendgame.com. And now some bonus material for those that are looking forward to join DAOs or to work in Web3. This also might apply for life as well, but I think I would come and say it very explicitly, especially if there are any young people in the audience. So yeah, like talk to your 20-year-old self kind of thing. So the first one is show up. There's a lot of times where you can just start showing up, say like, how can I help? Or I've done this, is this helpful or not? I could go through these other things. How else can I help? So the fact of being there, of being engaged and actually seeing how you can contribute to the project might lead you in a role position. Ideally, there's a framework for that, so you can kind of identify the good contributors and empower them and move them up the ranks if there's such a thing. But that's point number one. Point number two is the entrepreneurial mindset. So we've heard that DAOs are leader-less, but usually the opposite is true or should be true, whereas DAOs are leader-full. So if you don't have people that are almost completely autonomous and entrepreneurial, it will most likely fail. There are a lot of examples where people are just showing up and saying like, hey, what can I do? And it's like, well, there's a list of tasks, pick one and come back in a week. And then they never do anything. So some people really need to be handheld. And with these online communities, it's much harder to achieve that. It's much harder to create the compensation mechanisms. So usually anyone with an entrepreneurial mindset will have an easier time thriving there. And have lots of drive and curiosity. This is probably obvious, but if you actually are curious, if you keep learning, if you keep asking questions, if you keep trying to reframe ideas for you to understand them, but also for everyone else, eventually you will learn a lot more, a lot faster, and you will reach a position where you can actually do something that you like and that you enjoy in life. And the last one is organizing, simplifying, structuring complex information. So this is a bit like being a librarian. It's trying to understand everything. Well, unless you're like a specialist, in that case, you can be like a really good developer or marketing person, or you can really thrive at your specialty. But Otherwise, if you don't know where to start, this is a great way. Start organizing information for you, for everyone else, and that will give you a lot of a good overview of ways to actually see how you can help, how you can enable others to help, and yeah, that will give you a good idea of what to do next and how to contribute. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it. If there are any questions, I can answer them now, or as I was saying, happy to answer them later. If you guys want to reach out later, those are my socials. Thank you.
We have a few questions. How do you test how good is the governance model?
So governance should serve the purpose of the organization. As I was saying, probably FIFA needs like a whole constitution with laws and seeing how it works with different countries, different organisms, how people are elected. And I cannot even imagine the amount of documentation and bylaws that they have. If it's like a local football league in your neighborhood, and it's just a couple of parents coaching kids and having fun, then the governance might be much lighter. Like, okay, this is when the season starts, this is when it ends, this is how we appoint people, this is the money we need. So it really depends. It needs to serve the purpose, and it will also evolve if the organization evolves. So there's no one-size-fits-all answer. It really depends on what you're trying to accomplish.
Okay, and what are some of the good DAO governance examples?
Yeah, I don't know if the question is about Web3 or I don't know if you are in the audience. We want to scream. What's good governance example? Yeah, that's a hard one. No, it really depends. I tend to be more critical about it, and this is mainly because I'm trying to find ways of actually improve it. So you're always looking for the next experiment to try, or see where you can find something that could be done in a better way. But there are different ways that or different governance models that are actually working quite well. But I don't know. I would argue, for example, that Wikipedia works quite well. Maybe it's not the best one. I could speak about Maker, but I'm so ingrained that I only see the bad parts, and I did try to fix them. That's a bit my job. So sorry if anyone holds any MKR token. Yeah, that's a tough one. I'll pass on that one.
Okay. And can you tell us how many DAOs are focusing on creating a proper governance design framework?
Actually, that again. Yeah. So we recently started, and we're probably not the only ones, but we recently started collaborating with people from other DAOs, for example, Radical Optimism. There's a bunch of projects. I don't even know if I can name them, but the idea is to share learnings that we get, because it's very often that we repeat the same experiments and we reach to the same conclusions. And again, I could go on about this, but one of the I'll give an example, a quick one. One of the mistakes we made at some point is that we were funding teams to create value. So a team would say, hey, I would like to build software for you or for governance for the token holders. This is our experience. We're really good at this. So we will build something along these lines. And it was like, I don't know, it was a very vague kind of like vision of what the team should or would try to accomplish. And for the token holders, it was a vote that was like, yeah, we'll fund this team, or no, nuclear, they should leave. So it was very traumatic for everyone involved, because the negotiation was not very, it didn't flow very well. So you can either go to the forum and be very public and be like, hey, I think this sucks, or you should correct this 20%. I love the other 80%. And the team could choose to ignore you or to maybe change it. But also you wouldn't know who in the forum or the person giving the feedback, if they were an actual token holder or not, if they were, how much power they had. So it was very, very messy in that sense. So what we're trying to do now is this thing where actually governance funds projects. So you can say, hey, we want this created. Who can do it? And then this team could say, like, we'll build it, and then you can set up milestones. So it flips from funding the teams to funding the work. And going back to the question, we have seen this experiment fail at Maker, for example, and we've seen other DAOs actually go that road. And at some point, it's like, hey, guys, maybe you should try something else. We've already tried that. And it's like, no, it will work with us. So, yeah, I mean, everyone has the right to again, try the same things, or maybe you can trick them a bit and try to expect a different outcome. But that's a bit what we're trying. So once we set these groups to share more experiences, we might be able to leverage that and share things across different DAOs.
We only have 2 more. Do you think airdrops for governance tokens make sense?
Goes back to it depends. That's how you can tell that I worked as a consultant before. But no, I think that the really powerful thing of Web3 is that you can have the tokens and the decision power where it makes sense. And you can define that however you want. It could be expertise, it could be, I don't know, if we're trying to clean up a river in some country, you could actually give the villagers the possibility to vote or to choose some things, and they might know best. Same thing for, well, the example of, okay, the argument to, like, democracy is the best thing, but the argument is, like, should we vote where the pilot lands the plane? Probably not. Should we vote if the doctor removes the appendix? Probably not. So you do want these experts that they've studied and they work for it to be making those kind of decisions. So the airdrops might make sense. There has been a huge hype, and we've seen that go down. Not sure about the trends. I don't have any stats with me. I think they might make sense if you're incentivizing the users to come. If it's only this thing where you just do the liquidity mining and then the users leave, then it might not make that much sense. So it really depends on the project and what you're trying to achieve.
And can you tell us who are the right skilled people to create these frameworks?
Who are the right? What's the right skills?
Yes. What are the right skills?
I like to when I hire, I look for 2 very specific profiles. One is someone that studied kind of like mathematics or software engineering, something very, very logical and process oriented. And I try to look in interest if they play any instruments. So you have like the creativity. It might totally fail, but I did make a couple of really good hires from there. And then some other profile that I've been finding very interesting is someone that either studied law and they got tired of it. And it's like, no, I don't like the law in whatever country they studied. So I'm trying to find something different, because they have this framework of how our process written, all these processes, like how can you kind of like hack them and try to red team it and try to find the holes. So those are 2 profiles that I have interest in, and that you should find smart people that have the right mentality to go about it. But it really depends. It could be anything. I think that's what I like the most about this, like the industry. It's like you find people that are like, what, you're into, I don't know, longevity, and it's like fascinating, and they can talk to you for hours about something that you have no clue about. So that's the fascinating part.
Juan, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Big round of applause for Juan.